Namaskar and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology debunking mythology. Sattology means science of truth, a study of truth. Opposite of that is mythology, which is a study or science of fake, lie, or imagination. All the countries which were built on mythology are failing one by one, including the West. Economic turmoils are happening because these countries were not built on the people of their land. And short-term economic progress, but long-time upheaval. And the countries which are the colonies, whether they're colonies in the mindset like the 57 Islamic countries or the West, so-called West, Australia is also called the West, by the way. Most of these countries are occupied countries, and you'll see that internal turmoil, and it's actually going to haunt them. But the country is built on native cultures like India, Japan, and some other few countries, Scotland, Ireland, these are all independent countries. They are growing, flourishing, they're permanent civilizations. So, and by branding them as mythology, their history, the Western academics are trying to create a new world order which is guided by their mental droppings. But the real fact is the natives, when they are in power and their culture is respected, then those countries flourish. The biggest example is Pakistan is a failed state, Afghanistan is a failed state because those are Hindu countries, but occupied by Islam in the name of religion, and those countries will never be peaceful, ever. So thank you for joining today. I have a very special guest. She has been speaking about it. She's very popular in India, and she speaks on various issues concerned with reality. And so let us welcome Deepali Patwadkar.
Namaste, Adityaji. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
You're very welcome. So Deepali ji, what do you think of what's going on in the world today? Like when we see that so much chaos is being created by the European colonialists who actually destroyed the whole world for gold, glory, and God. That was the Papal Bull, and that's the title of my last book also, one of the last books. So what do you think is like, how does a real native culture helps preserve peace and prosperity for the local people?
Like very wonderful question, Adityaji. What we are seeing today is so many of the original cultures of the world, be them from the Northern America or the Southern America, Central America, Canada, Australia, all of this, they have been wiped out. But the thing is that the Western world is now waking up and understanding how this has really, this is harming the nature, how this is harming. This is going to harm their prosperity in future, and how this is also going to take them towards the end of those of the civilization as well. And because of this, what we are seeing today is that these countries want the original people, want the traditions of the original people, which are related to nature worship, which are related to taking care of sacred lands, of sacred forests, of sacred water sources, to be back in place. And I think this is what I'm going to touch upon today when I'm going to share some of my slides.
One thing I have seen is that that if you look at Maoris in New Zealand, if you look at Aborigines in Australia, if you look at the natives of Canada, Canada has a very large Native American population. We have seen the graves being dug out of the children over there, Native American children, because they were not following the Catholicism way of life. They were buried under the ground with torture, and that was done by the priests, the church priests. Now, it's like karma is a way of hitting back in a big way, and it in ways which you will feel the maximum pain in the area which you never know. The karma is like just like a law of nature. It hits back. So when I'm seeing these tragedies coming one by one, and I'm not going to name anyone, but the Native American tragedy, not a single place of worship of Native Americans in USA or South America is kept as it is, or continued worship. In the governments have banned worshiping over there. In the US, it was banned to worship in a Native American site.
Absolutely.
And the same thing would have happened to India, where all the Hindu temples, Hindus are the natives of India, all the native temples would be put on the museum. Like if you go to South Delhi, it's called the Purana Killa. Purana Killa has all the important Murti, Bhagwan Murti deity, which should be worshipped in a museum. And the most surprising thing is Hindus watch them and their heart doesn't bleed, because all the Murti and deities are meant to be worshipped and kept not in a museum. Museum means that you are putting it as a history now. So what do you have to say on that?
Yes, yes. This, it is really very sad. Because there were two waves of colonization in India. The first was a Islamic wave, in which we had Turks and we had Persians and we had Mughals who invaded India, who colonized India, and then later on we had the Europeans. So we had Portuguese and we had the British, even the French, who colonized India. And in both of these colonization phases, so many things which were in India, they were destroyed and looted. Today, there are hundreds and thousands of the murtis of the Hindu deities, the Jain deities, or the Buddhist deities, which are there in museum. And these deities, their real place is in a temple, which is the house of the deity. It is called Devalaya. So a temple is basically the home of the deity, and that is the place where the deity is worshipped. And people will come over there. They will sing praises about that god, and they will offer food. They will bathe the deity. They will have put ornaments on the deity. They will do all these things. So the god over there is basically treated like a child. The way parents will take care of a child, in the same way the murti is taken care of. This is what the murti deserves. It deserves its own home. It deserves to have its devotees, and the devotees also deserve to have their god in their temples. But what we see is there are these thousands of murtis which are there in museums. They are kept in some dark corner. And only when there are going to be somebody who is going to see those murtis, they will put on the lights and all. They will clean and whatever. They'll clean only when some they are going to be put on display. They are being treated as a thing. They are being treated as an artifact, which is not the case. We Hindus, we are a living civilization. We are a living culture, and our deities are also living deities. They are not things to be, looked upon in museums. Their real place is in temples.
See that the one of the things which comes in our Shastra, Krishna Bhagwan talks to Uddhav. It's in Uddhav Gita, and he says that it is easy. In Bhagavad Gita also he has said, but it is easy for him to people to worship a person than to avyakta, because and the Abrahamic ideology is God is never a person. He is unknown. Nobody has seen. It is a very foolish statement, because you and I have not been to Burkina Faso. But I always take the Burkina Faso because people will not know where the country is also, Burkina Faso. But we know it exists. We know there are people from there. And so by hearing also, we come to know that it exists. The country exists over there. They must, and so just by saying that nobody has seen it, it's a very foolish statement. It's a very ignorant statement also. But there are people who have seen it. People who live in Africa have been there. And so same logic comes, and it says that people say that Murti Puja is like there are very famous Indian gurus who have said If the murti cannot protect itself, how will it protect you? That's the whole point. You need to protect the murti. And that is a seva. That's yoga. And that's how you're training yourself to learn how to serve. And when Narada Pancharatrika focuses exclusive way to serve the deity. Serve the deity. I say Archa Vigraha. Archa Vigraha means you need to, that Vigraha is meant for your Archana. That's what it's called Archa Vigraha. So this propaganda that God nobody has seen and therefore nobody can see him also, that is not an Indian thing. That is not a Vedic thought. Vedic thought says Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagwan. Bhagwan means a person. So what do you have to say on that? Because it's a philosophical mispreaching and a misunderstanding, and then it comes out like this. So most of the Hindus themselves neglect, because the murti is there for you to serve, not to take service from him. Yes, go ahead, please.
Multiple answers to this question of yours, Adityaji. One is, there is a very basic difference in the philosophy. The Abrahamic philosophy is God created the world. So God created the world in 6 days and seventh day rest and all those things. So God created the world and God is separate from the world. This is the Abrahamic philosophy. The Hindu philosophy is that the God himself, or the God itself, I should say, the God itself, the Brahma itself became the world. So this is the major difference. So when it is said that the Brahma or the Brahma is formless, the formless Brahma appears in so many various forms. So it is the God which appears as this whole world. So even Krishna says in Gita, if you want to see me, look at this world and you will see me. I am in this world. So that is one thing. And the second thing which I wanted to talk about was the Murti Puja. So basically the Hindu Dharma is, it has variety. So there will be variety in every way. So there will be atheists who are still Hindus. There will be those who believe in God, who are also Hindus. There will be those who believe in one God. There will be those who believe in multiple gods. There will be those who worship the formless God. There will be those who will worship the God in the form of the Murti of Krishna, in the Murti of Shiva, in the Murti of Ram, in the Murti of a Devi, a female deity. So there is so much variety, and all of this together is called as Hindu Dharma.
See, on the creation part, Bhagavad Puran explains creation, Mahabharata explains creation, Ramayana, there are parts of creation. So the Mahat Tattva is entered by Vishnu, and then Mahat Tattva and Brahma is born from the navel of Vishnu. Is a person. It's not like Avyakta. It's not Avyakta, it's Vyakta. And then he's born, and then he does tapa. Then Saraswati, who is a Lakshmi, when he inspires him for tapa, and then he creates. Then he, after tapasya, he understands what he's supposed to do. Then he uses the Mahat Tattva, but Vishnu has to enter, otherwise the life won't come in. So the Vishnu has to enter, and then the physical material creation of beautiful earth is created, which is real for our eyes, our experience, but it's temporary. That's the only difference. Just like our bodies are temporary, it's real. I mean, if I have a body, why will Bhagwan not ever have a body? If that means if I have a body and he doesn't have a body, he's Avyakta, that means I'm superior. Naturally, because I have more things to do. I can eat laddu, and he can only see laddu. So the point is that the whole creation is the only place.
The Vyakta Roop of
Vyakta and Avyakta. Yeah, Atma is cannot see with your eyes. But when the Atma is in this body, you can interact with me. I'm producing sound. I'm speaking. I'm moving my hands. So, but in this body, you can see me. So just by ignoring the body, that means you're ignoring me also. But yes, the moment the soul leaves the body also lies on the floor. It is like a matter. Please go ahead with your presentation. I think it's on Gyan Vapi. Please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So first, let me share the screen and Oh, wait 1 second.
So there is a main creation, and then there is secondary creation, and like this, there are 4 or 5 creations, including every single emotions are being mentioned, that how Brahma creates all vritti.
Mhm. Yeah. So this is for today.
Yes.
Temple back. So you are seeing this pillar,
Beautiful.
and this is a very intricately designed pillar, and you will see all these Hindu symbols on this pillar. So anyway, so what I wanted to talk about was the things that are happening all over the world. We started with this question about the indigenous people and how they interact with the environment, how they take care of the nature through the worship of nature, through their deities, and how the Western world today is now understanding the importance of this nature worship, which has to be not at the level of, like, policies, or not at the level where, the country heads will come together and celebrate Earth Day or Environment Day or Water Day or something like that, but it has to be seeped into each and every person on this earth. So who does that is the native cultures, and that is why the native cultures all over the world are, like, coming back into prominence. So if we were to take a look at the map of USA, and you will see that, most of the state names, be it like Ohio, be it Mississippi, be it Dakota, uh, Mexico, and Tennessee, Texas, all of these are the original Indian names. So these are the uh, Red Indian names, the names which were given by the indigenous people of America. And basic thing over here to see is that even if the population of the indigenous people is now, like, less than 5% or whatever in the Americas, this has happened because of the colonization and because of, like, the settler colonization which happened in America in the 15th 16th century, from that time onwards. But it still retains some of those, it retains those names. It retains those names in the river names, in the names of forests, in the names of so many different lands all across America, all across United States. And what is happening today in the USA is this movement, this campaign called as Land Back. So this is a campaign which is initiated by the indigenous people, and what they are seeking is that the indigenous people get the control of the land which historically belonged to their ancestors. And this was the land which was taken away from the indigenous people by the settlers, by the European settlers who took away their lands. And today, this is a very prominent movement, the land back movement. And this movement is backed by the, like, not just the indigenous people, but even America is changing. We are seeing that the American people are returning so much land back to the Native American tribes. So here are some of the news clippings. So here is a DOI returns more than 18,000 acres of land to the Native American tribes. And this is something which is a revolution. This is something of a revolution where the indigenous tribes are getting back what belonged originally to them. Here is another news, very recent one from January, and here the forest land in California, 500 acres of land, was returned to the indigenous tribes. And that was from BBC, a news from BBC. Same thing you will see in Australia. Australia again was a colonized where colonizers settled down, and the original 100% population of the Aboriginals in Australia, it is now reduced to few percent of the people over there. But when you look at the names of parks and forests, you take a look at the names of towns and villages, you take a look at the names of the rivers, the forests, the rivers, the deserts, all of these names are the original Aboriginal names. So this all of this is the fiber, the original fiber, which is retained even after a couple of hundreds of years of colonization. And now what is happening in Australia? Same things. Again, the Australians of today, they are returning the land to the Aboriginal people. So rainforests, you can see that more than almost 4,000 acres of Australia's national parks has been returned to the Aboriginal tribes. And here is another news where 52,000 hectares of land was returned to the Aboriginals. This news is from 2016. And another news where the sacred land where hundreds of indigenous people were killed, the land is being returned to their descendants. So these are the things which are happening in America, these are the things which are happening in Canada, these are the things which are happening in Australia as well. So what has happened in India? Exactly the same thing has happened in India. This happened a little earlier, before the colonization happened. So this is from 12th century onwards. We had India was attacked by Turks and Ghaznavids and Mughals. And these were the people who came from outside of India. They were invaders, they were colonizers, and they were settlers. And they did exactly everything what the settlers do. They massacred the indigenous people of India. They occupied the lands of the indigenous people, and they took away the sacred places of the indigenous people. So this is exactly what has happened in America. This is exactly what happened in Canada. This is exactly what happened in South America, in Australia, in New Zealand. Same thing happened in India. And we see that not even traces, we see it today everywhere. So here is an example of a sacred place which was called which was a temple of Shiva. And this temple was destroyed, and on the same temple what was built was the masjid, Gyan Vapi Masjid. Even the name, you can see over here that it's very obvious. These two architectures, these are very obvious over here. You can see the the original Hindu temple over here, and the masjid which was built later on after destroying the temple. And even the name of this masjid is Gyan Vapi. The Gyan Vapi is basically a Sanskrit word, which means the reservoir or a tank of knowledge. And Shivji is the god of knowledge. So the temple of Shivji, of course, would be called the Gyan Vapi. So these things are really very obvious even today. And this is not one temple. There are so many sacred temples which have been converted into mosques. So I'll just give you a list. I can show you just a list of this. Okay, so I wonder if you can see this. Give me just 1 second while I share the right window. Okay, can you see this browser now, Aditya-ji?
Yes, we can see that. We can see that. Yes.
So here you can see this is a very preliminary list of the sacred places which were destroyed by the invaders, which were destroyed by the colonizers, the settlers, who were Turks, who were Mughals. And see, this is the list of temples which were destroyed in Bihar, in the state of Bihar, in one district over there. So this is like, a long list. I can simply keep going on and on. This is from the district of Agra in Uttar Pradesh. And you will see so many temples which are converted into either graveyard, they are converted into masjid, they are converted into minars. Um, there, they are converted into Jama Masjid. This is an extremely long list. And there are, literary evidences. There is the evidence of letters, of farmans, which were given out by these colonizer emperors like Aurangzeb, who raised not tens, hundreds, but they raised thousands of temples. It is known that there are at least 40,000 temples which have been, you see this list, it goes on and on, which have been destroyed, which have been converted. I'm like, you can just get the idea of how long this list is. And I'm just going to go through it. Here is that list. All these temples. And you will find this list just goes on and on. I didn't go till the end of it. There is this book by Sitaram Goyalji, and in that book he has it's a book in 2 volumes. So he speaks about the Hindu temples, the temples built by the indigenous people of India, who were nature worshipping people, the pagans, the Hindus, who built these temples, and these were their sacred places. They have to be on sacred sites. These sites are like on the banks of a river, or they are on the banks where 2 rivers meet. There is a confluence of 2 rivers, or these temples are on mountain tops, on peaks, and the temples are places where there is so much energy. So these are very sacred sites for the Hindus, and these sacred sites, the similar sacred sites of the indigenous people, which were taken over by the colonizers in America, in Australia. Similar thing happened in India when the people outside of India who attacked and took away these sacred sites. So today what is happening is in Canada, you can see that the white Canadians, they are giving the land back to the indigenous people. They are doing so through their wills, through trusts, and they are even doing land transfers. So the common people are doing this. The common people are realizing that their ancestors did something wrong and it needs to be corrected. So the people and the governments of Canada, USA, Australia, they are correcting the mistakes that happened in the past. They have learned that the indigenous people were connected to the nature so much more than the today's civilization. The traditions of the past, the traditions of the ancient cultures, we need to bring them back. And to do so, the sacred land has to be returned to the indigenous people. So this is what is happening all over the world. This is what is happening in the US and Australia and Canada. The same thing needs to happen in India. In India, there are people who think that they are descendants of Turks and Mughals. They are not, but they still think that they are descendants of Turks and Mughals. But instead of correcting the crimes which were, the mistakes, correcting the mistakes of past, what they are doing is they are still supporting the colonizers. They are still supporting these colonizer settlers of the past. What we need in India is a movement called as Temple Back. Just as the Land Back campaign in the Americas, there needs to be a Temple Back campaign in India. And with this campaign, what should happen is the indigenous people who were oppressed, who were ruled, who were the victims of colonization, the Hindus, all that they are asking for is their sacred lands, the sacred temples. And the Temple Back should return these temples to the indigenous people, to the original owners. This is exactly what is happening in the Gyanvapi Mandir case. So this is a picture of
So,
India today.
most of the world doesn't know that the reservations were created in the most barren lands where nothing grows, and those were given to the Native Americans. So Native Americans, natives of all over the world, like the natives were owning the land of USA today, Canada, entire South America. And the entire South America is still poor. It's in my book Gold, Glory, and God. You must read that book. It's all these evidences are there, including Europe. The native culture was destroyed. I have proved in my book that Durga was worshipped in South France. Very popular. Even today, Sarai Kali. It's called Sarai Kali.
Yes, yes.
And the deity over there, Ishtar. Ishtar is 8 form. Ashtashula Prahane Khetaka Dharini. Exactly like that. Only thing is the dresses don't match the Indian dresses. But other than that, completely describes the Sanskrit shlok. Ashtashula Prahane Khetaka. She has 8 hands with 8 weapons, and she appears in the sky. And there are many prayers of Arjun and Yudhishthir Maharaj where he says that the Durga's places are all over the world. So on earth, geographically, they call South America as Patal,
Mhm.
not the Patal. People think Patal derogatory. No, there is nothing derogatory in the world, including like Shivji is been given a place in Vital Loka, which is in the lower one. But he also has places all over the earth because he's Maheshwar. Because of him, the progeny comes. He is the masculine symbol, and his wife Durga is the feminine symbol. So all these proofs are there, and the native cultures had a very similar to the Vedic version. Like they worship the Surya, and I was just seeing a documentary yesterday, and in Guatemala there is a temple of Nakum, and it's such a huge temple. It's as big as Jagannath Puri temple, huge, and it has been locked up by the Spaniards. Nobody can enter there, and they made a church right next to, because they could not destroy it. The locals would have objected too much, and there will be violence over there, significant violence. So they made a church next door and locked it, so nobody goes there and instead goes to the church. And what they did also, they broke the deities inside, made them powdered, and put in the walls of the church. Even today it happens in Mexico. They go to Lady of Guadalupe temple in Guadalajara. So locals were going to the church to worship the powder of the deities inside, not because of the whatever they put from Europe or their mental thing. So they said, that, yours is bad, but I am giving you a murti, you worship that one. That's what they're saying. So which is very hypocritical, and I'm sure I do support the land back movement completely, and I want the reservations to be like no casinos in the reservations, and the US government should actually empower Native Americans to have a say. Nowadays they can't even vote actually, and they can't even vote because the US law says that you cannot have a PO box address. But when somebody is living so much interior in the reservation, like 20-30 miles inside, the USPS won't go there, the postal service won't go there, so they have to put a post box outside. So the laws must be changed so that they should be allowed to vote through PO boxes also. So like disenfranchised, and there are 7 million Native Americans today, not 2 million, 3 million, 7 million. The population has increased, and and they must be allowed to practice their own cultures. And I also want the US government to not build any pipelines over their lands, no border lines over their, no borders over their sacred lands. They're very much like Hindus. For them, the land is sacred, and so a lot
I
of things
think
are.
when the Europeans also wake up and realize that they're they're all the Europeans also, they are like converted people. They are not originally Christian, they are originally pagans. And when they realize that, I think everybody will want to have the old sacred groves, the old sacred trees and forests, and the temples. of the Germanic gods and goddesses, of the Greek gods and goddesses, the Roman gods and goddesses back. But it will only happen when they realize their original true identity.
Yeah, and most of the Europeans, the original Europeans are the Romanis and the Francos, Germanic tribes, and all these names are new, like the Celtics, the Gauls. All of them had connection to Vedic philosophy. They were worshipping local, and somehow they've been uprooted. Norway, which champions itself to be the human rights champion, there is they have the maximum native population who have no rights whatsoever. So all these human rights champions, they have the worst human rights records. And Europe, like you correctly said, in Europe, the paisano means pagan means like is a derogatory term. Like the shamanism is a derogatory term. So when in the Western academics, when they call people of faith, when they say people of faith means only Christians, means natives have no faith, Hindus have no faith, aborigines have no faith, and a country, and I can go on and on, because if anyone wants to read my views on this and the history, Gold, Glory and God is available in the USA, which you can actually see. Gold, Glory and God was a papal bull on the basis of which Atlantic East was given to the Portuguese and Atlantic West was given to the Spaniards, and in 1492, and that's where the entire carnage started. And the same thing was trying to be done to India, but Marthanda Varma is the first king of India who defeated Dutch in the Strait naval fight in 1741. And that's how, because the Europeans got defeated militarily, they could not go full force on India. Like one of the Americans was telling me, if Spaniards would have attacked, they would have wiped us. No, Spaniards lost. Spaniards lost on the west coast of India by the kings of, people, very few people tell the glories of the kings of South India. They were very good fighters, very, very good fighters. And Babur was scared to go south of India because of these kings. So thank you so much, Deepali ji, and I can go on and on. And thank you all the viewers for coming on the show, and do watch it live. It will be live very quickly on YouTube. Do comment us and let us know your feedback. Namaste.
Namaste.